Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Hunt. The envelope lay on the silver tray like a fallen leaf, crisp and blood-red, sealed with wax the colour of old claret. Hercule Poirot, seated at his breakfast table in the precise centre of his Whitehaven mansion's flat, regarded it with the mild suspicion he reserved for anything that disturbed the symmetry of his morning ritual. The postmark read, Harrington Chase, Yorkshire, and the handwriting, bold, aristocratic, impatient, belonged to someone who expected obedience. He slit the envelope with a butter knife, unfolded the heavy card, and read, My dear Monsieur Poirot, you are cordially invited to a weekend of sport and camaraderie at Harrington Chase, 14th and 16th November. The stags are in prime condition, the cellars unrivalled, and the company select. A matter of mutual interest may arise. Do come, yours, etc., Reginald Harrington. 9th Baronet Poirot's moustache twitched. Sport? He who considered a brisk walk to the underground an athletic feat. And yet the phrase a matter of mutual interest carried the faint perfume of intrigue. He set the card beside his café au lait, aligning it parallel to the spoon, and considered. 3 days later, the Bentley purred up the gravel drive of Harrington Chase beneath a sky the colour of wet slate. The manor rose like a fortress of honey-coloured stone, its chimneys bristling against the wind. Flanking the entrance stood 2 stone stags, antlers locked in eternal combat. Poirot stepped out, coat collar turned up, and inhaled the sharp scent of pine and gun oil. A butler, tall, cadaverous, with the stillness of a heron, relieved him of his valise. Welcome, Monsieur Poirot. His lordship awaits in the great hall. The hall swallowed sound. Suits of armour stood sentinel beneath a hammer-beam roof black with age. A fire roared in a grate large enough to roast an ox. Above the mantel, a 12-point stag's head gazed down with glass eyes that seemed to follow movement. Lord Reginald Harrington strode forward. Tweed +4s straining at the knee, face ruddy from wind and whisky. 55, Poirot judged, with the shoulders of a man who had once broken horses and now broke lesser men. Poirot, capital! Thought you might sniff at the invitation, but here you are. He pumped the detective's hand with the enthusiasm of a terrier. Come, meet the quarry, the guests. He steered Poirot toward a cluster near the fire. First, Lady Functional Beatrice Harrington, the host's sister, thin as a riding crop, eyes sharp as a hawk's. She wore mourning black, though her husband had died a decade ago, and her smile never reached her eyes. Enchanted, she murmured, though enchantment seemed the last thing on her mind. Next, Captain Miles Harrington, the heir 28, sunburnt from Kenya, restless as a colt. His handshake was too firm, his gaze sliding away. Honoured sir, father says you're the best there is. Poirot inclined his head. One tries to be adequate, Captain. Miss Diana Vale, dark-haired, green-eyed, wore a scarlet sweater that clashed gloriously with the room's gloom. She was introduced as Miles's fiancée, but her fingers twisted the emerald on her left hand as though it burned. Mr. Felix Lang, art dealer, small, dapper, with a moustache waxed to needlepoints. His eyes flicked ceaselessly, pricing, assessing. He bowed over Poirot's hand with continental flourish. And Dr. Evelyn Shaw, our local sawbones, Harrington boomed. The doctor was a wiry woman in her 40s, tweed skirt, sensible shoes, eyes the pale blue of glacier ice. She nodded curtly. Last, Mrs. Agnes Finch, housekeeper, grey bun, keys jangling at her waist like a jailer. She curtsied, eyes downcast. Dinner was announced. The dining room glowed with candlelight. Silver stag candelabra marched down the table. Venison, naturally. Poirot, who preferred sole meunière, picked at the meat while conversation eddied around him. Poaching's the devil, Harrington declared, carving with theatrical flair. Lost 2 hinds last month. If I catch the blighter, I'll string him up beside the trophies. Father, really, Miles muttered. Diana laughed too brightly. Reginald, you'd hang your own shadow if it trespassed. Lang raised a glass. To shadows, then. May they stay in their place. Poirot noted the undercurrents. Beatrice's icy silence when Miles spoke of Africa. Diana's hand brushing Lang's sleeve. Dr. Shaw watching everyone with clinical detachment. After port, Harrington clapped Poirot on the shoulder. You must see the trophy room before bed. Pride of the chase. They processed down a corridor panelled in oak dark as stout. Double doors opened onto a cavernous chamber lit by green-shaded lamps. The air smelled of dust, leather, and something metallic. Heads lined the walls. Stag, boar, tiger, a rare white rhino. Glass eyes glinted. In the centre stood a mahogany table, displaying curios, ivory-handled pistols, a Zulu assegai, a unicorn horn mounted in silver. Magnificent, no? Harrington gestured proudly. Every piece of story. That tiger nearly had me in O2, and the horn, he lowered his voice. Family legend says it's from the last unicorn shot in Scotland. Rubbish, of course, but fetches a fortune from collectors. Poirot's gaze travelled the room. A gap between trophies caught his eye. A rectangular patch of lighter paint where something had hung until recently. Something missing, Lord Harrington? The baronet frowned. The Maasai shield. Odd. Finch swears she dusted it yesterday. A draught stirred the curtains. Somewhere, a clock chimed 11. Poirot felt the prickle at the base of his skull that heralded trouble. Perhaps the shield is merely resting, he murmured. Harrington laughed. Everything rests here eventually, Poirot, even the living. They returned to the hall. Guests dispersed. Diana lingering, at the foot of the stairs, Lang lighting a cigarette with a gold lighter shaped like a bullet. Poirot bade good night and climbed to his room, a corner suite overlooking the deer park. He undressed methodically, laying out tomorrow's suit, aligning shoes at perfect right angles. From his window, moonlight silvered the lawns. Far off, a stag bellowed, a lonely, guttural sound. Poirot slipped into bed, but sleep eluded him. His mind arranged facts like chess pieces. A missing shield, a unicorn horn of dubious provenance, a guest list simmering with unspoken resentments, and a host who invited a detective to a hunting party. He closed his eyes. In the darkness, the stag bellowed again, closer now, as though scenting blood on the wind. Chapter 2. Shadows Among the Antlers. The breakfast gong sounded at 8 sharp, but Poirot had been awake since 6, performing his toilette with the solemnity of a high priest. He descended the grand staircase in a charcoal suit and dove-grey spats, the scent of bergamot and toast drifting from the dining room. The table was laid for 8, yet only 5 places showed signs of use. A single red rose lay across Diana Vale's plate, its petals bruised. Mrs. Finch poured coffee with the mechanical grace of a metronome. Miss Vale begged to be excused, monsieur. A headache. Captain Harrington and Mr. Lang are walking the dogs. Dr. Shaw was called to the village, sick child. Lady Beatrice is indisposed. Lord Harrington entered, cheeks wind-burned, eyes bloodshot. Morning, Poirot. Sleep well. Damned mattress in the east wing is lumpy as a sack of walnuts. He speared a kipper with unnecessary violence. Poirot buttered a triangle of toast. And the Maasai shield? Has it returned to its place? Harrington's fork paused. Still missing. Finch swears blind she locked the trophy room at 10. I'll have the staff searched. He barked the last word toward the doorway, where the butler hovered like a storm cloud. Very good, my lord, the butler intoned, and vanished. At 9:30, Poirot found himself in the gun-room with Miles Harrington, who was cleaning a Purdy shotgun with the absent devotion of a man polishing regrets. "Your father is protective of his collection," Poirot observed, running a gloved finger along a row of cartridges. Miles snapped the breech shut. "Obsessed, more like. That shield, he paid a king's ransom for it in Nairobi. Claims it saved his life once. Superstitious rot." He hesitated. "Look, Monsieur Poirot, there's something." A scream shredded the air, high and animal. It came from the direction of the trophy room. They ran. The corridor stretched like a tunnel. The double doors stood ajar, a wedge of yellow light spilling onto the runner. Inside, Mrs. Finch knelt on the Persian rug, apron pressed to her mouth. Blood, dark, arterial, pooled beneath the mahogany table, seeping into the weave like ink into blotting paper. Poirot knelt. The victim lay, on his back, arms flung wide as though embracing the ceiling. Felix Lang, art dealer, late of Bond Street. His white shirt front was a Rorschach of crimson. The antique Maasai dagger, the dagger from the display, protruded from his sternum at a precise 45-degree angle. His eyes, wide and glassy, stared at the mounted tiger above, as if expecting it to pounce. Harrington arrived, breathing like a bellows. "Good God!" Poirot's voice cut through the shock. "No one touches the body. Finch, when did you find him?" Just now, sir. Came to dust before his lordship's tour. The door was unlocked. I swear I locked it last night." Miles Harrington's face had gone the colour of putty. "Lang was alive at midnight. We shared a nightcap in the library." Poirot stood. Blood had spattered the lower jaw of a nearby ibex, giving it a macabre grin. On the table, the unicorn horn lay askew, its silver mount tarnished with a fingerprint smudge. The gap where the shield had hung now gaped like a missing tooth. "Captain, fetch Dr. Shaw. Mrs. Finch, the keys." He extended a manicured hand. The housekeeper fumbled the ring from her belt. Poirot examined the trophy room key. Old iron, no duplicate in sight. The lock showed no scratches, no jimmy marks. Harrington recovered his voice. "The dogs, why didn't they bark?" "An excellent question," Poirot murmured. He moved to the window, heavy velvet curtains drawn tight. Between them, a sliver of glass showed fingerprints, small, gloved. The latch was unfastened. Outside, the fog clung to the lawn like wet wool. Footprints, indistinct, led from the French window to the gravel path, then vanished. Dr. Shaw arrived within the hour, medical bag clinking. She knelt beside the body, gloved hands efficient. "Dead 4 to 6 hours. Single thrust, upward, severed the aorta. Instantaneous." She glanced at the dagger. "Your family heirloom, Reginald?" Harrington nodded dumbly. Poirot crouched again. Lang's right hand clutched something, a single crimson thread, coarse, like horsehair. His left wrist bore bruises, shaped like fingerprints. "Someone held him," Dr. Shaw said quietly. "Struggled, but not for long." Poirot's gaze travelled upward. The tiger's glass eyes reflected the scene in miniature. The detective, the doctor, the pooling blood. Something glinted in the tiger's open mouth, a sliver of white. He fetched a chair, climbed and extracted a folded scrap of paper wedged between the fangs. Unfolding it revealed a charcoal sketch, the missing Maasai shield, annotated in Lang's spidery hand, authentic, Maasai, circa 1890, value $12,000, deliver Friday. Harrington swore under his breath. Poirot pocketed the note. It seems Mr. Lang was not merely a guest but a broker, and someone objected, violently. The trophy room was sealed. Constable Greaves, a gangly youth with ears like radar dishes, arrived from the village to secure the scene. Poirot interviewed the staff in the butler's pantry, while Fogg pressed against the windows like a living thing. Mrs. Finch locked the room at 10:07 p.m., saw Mr. Lang and Captain Harrington enter the library at 11:45, heard nothing after. Butler, Jenkins, polished the silver until midnight, passed the trophy room corridor at 12:15, doors closed, no light beneath. Maid, Rosie, took hot water to Miss Vale at 1 a.m., heard a thump like a book falling from the east wing. Gardener, old Tom, found the French window unlatched at 6 a.m., thought the wind. By luncheon, the house felt like a mausoleum. Diana Vale appeared, pale, eyes swollen. She claimed to have slept through the night dosed with laudanum. Lady Beatrice refused to leave her room, sending word via tray that she was prostrated. Poirot gathered the remaining guests in the library. Rain lashed the mullioned windows, the fire spat and hissed. "Let us be logical," he began, pacing before the hearth. "The killer entered between midnight and, say, 2 o'clock. They knew the house, the habits, the location of the dagger. They left by the window. Yet the dogs, where are the dogs?" Harrington shifted. "Locked in the kennels. Orders were to keep them quiet. Miss Vale dislikes barking." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Convenient. Now motives? Mr. Lang trafficked in artifacts of questionable provenance. The shield was to be sold. Someone wished to prevent this or profit from it." Miles Harrington's jaw tightened. "Lang approached me last week. Wanted to buy the shield outright. I refused." "And yet," Poirot said softly, "he sketched it in the tiger's mouth. A hiding place or a message?" Diana Vale's voice trembled. "Felix said the unicorn horn was fake, that Reginald had been cheated. They argued yesterday over brandy." Harrington surged to his feet. "Lies! Lang was a parasite. Enough." Poirot raised a hand. "We deal in facts. Fact. The dagger was wiped clean, except for one print, partial, on the blade's base. Fact. The unicorn horn was moved after death. See the blood smear on its tip. Fact. Someone in this house is a murderer." Thunder rolled overhead. The lights flickered. In the momentary darkness, Poirot heard a sharp intake of breath, whose he could not tell. When light returned, Diana Vale was staring at the door. "There's blood," she whispered, "on the handle." A single crimson fingerprint marred the brass. Fresh. Poirot moved swiftly, flinging the door open. The corridor stretched empty, fog seeping in from an open window at the far end. On the parquet floor, a trail of drops led toward the servants' stairs, then stopped abruptly, as though the bleeder had taken flight, or been carried. Poirot closed the door. "The hunt," he said quietly, "has truly begun." Chapter 3. The stag's silent witness fog lay thick as wool over Harrington Chase, muffling the world to a grey hush. Constable, Greaves had strung police tape across the trophy room doors with the solemnity of a boy tying his first knot. It sagged already, damp and defeated. Poirot stood beneath the mounted 12-pointer, the stag that had watched over last night's horror, and let his gaze travel the room like a searchlight. Dr. Evelyn Shaw had removed Felix Lang's body at dawn, the sheet over the stretcher blooming scarlet where the dagger still protruded. The blood on the rug had darkened to a near-black lake. Poirot knelt, careful of his trousers, and studied the pattern. A fan of arterial spray to the left, then heavier pooling where the heart had emptied. The dagger's entry angle suggested the killer stood slightly behind and to the victim's right, taller, or on tiptoe. He rose and addressed the room as though it were a witness. You saw everything, mon vieux. Now you will speak. The stag's glass eyes reflected him in miniature. A small, neat man in a dove-grey overcoat, Homburg tilted at precisely 30 degrees. Poirot began with the French window. The latch was old brass, scarred by decades of use. Fresh scratches, 3 parallel lines, marred the metal where a blade had pried it. The prints outside were useless. Overnight rain had turned them to shallow craters filled with water. Inside, the unicorn horn lay on the table where Lang had fallen against it. Poirot lifted it with a silk handkerchief. Ivory or narwhal tusk, cool, heavy, the silver mount loose. A smear of blood crossed the spiral like a red ribbon. Beneath the mount, etched faintly, R.H. 1887, Reginald Harrington's grandfather. He replaced it exactly. The Maasai dagger was gone with the corpse, but its outline remained in dried blood on the rug. Poirot measured with his pocket rule, 14 inches from tip to guard. The blade had been displayed on the wall beside a Boer war rifle. Now the hook stood empty, the velvet backing torn where the weapon had been yanked free. Footprints crisscrossed the floor. Mrs. Finch's sensible heels, Jenkins the butler's polished Oxfords, Greaves's hobnails. Poirot isolated one set, narrow pointed toe, slight wear at the outer edge. A woman's court shoe, size 5, Diana Vale's. He followed them, from the door, halting beside the body, then to the window. There they overlapped with a larger print, broad, square-toed, a man's brogue. The two had stood together, arguing perhaps, before the smaller set retreated. A glint beneath the rhino's plinth caught his eye. He extracted a mother-of-pearl button, monogrammed M.H., Miles Harrington. The thread was crimson silk, matching the thread in Lang's dead fist. Poirot pocketed it. Lord Harrington burst in, face puce. "Poirot! This is intolerable! The telephone line's down. Storm took the pole. We're cut off." "Isolé," Poirot murmured, "like the stag in winter." Harrington paced. "Greaves is useless. Sent him to guard the kennels. Dogs are frantic, won't stop, howling." Poirot's ears pricked. "Show me!" The kennels lay behind the stables, stone buildings roofed in slate. 6 liver and white pointers hurled themselves at the wire, barking in a frenzy. Their paws had churned the gravel run into mud. Poirot noted drag marks, something heavy pulled toward the woods. Blood flecks, already browning. He crouched. They smelled death, and something else, fear. Back in the trophy room, Poirot summoned the household to the long table. Rain drummed the windows like impatient fingers. He arranged them like suspects in a police identity parade. Lord Harrington at the head, Miles beside him, Diana Vale pale in emerald wool, Lady Beatrice rigid in black bombazine, Dr. Shaw wiping her spectacles, Jenkins the butler standing behind his master's chair like a funeral monument. Poirot began without preamble. Last night, between midnight and 2, Mr. Lang entered this room. He was not alone. The button, he held up the mother-of-pearl disc, was torn from Captain Harrington's smoking jacket during a struggle, the thread matches that clutched in the victim's hand. Miles flushed. "I told you, we shared a drink. At what hour did you part?" "Just after 12. Lang said he wanted to examine the shield again. I went to bed." Poirot turned to Diana. "Mademoiselle, your shoes, size 5, yes? You were seen near this room at 1 o'clock." Diana's chin lifted. "I couldn't sleep. I walked the corridor. The door was closed. Yet your footprint stands beside the body." She faltered. "I heard a noise. Opened the door. Saw—" Her voice cracked. "Saw Felix. I ran." Lady Beatrice's voice cut like a whip. "Liar! You were Lang's creature. He promised you money to persuade Miles to sell the shield." Silence exploded into accusation. Miles leapt up. "Aunt, enough!" Poirot raised a hand. "Assez. Let us reconstruct." He positioned Jenkins as Lang, Miles as himself. "You argue. Lang wants the shield. You refuse. He threatens exposure, perhaps of your gambling debts, Captain." Miles went white. Lang turns to leave. Someone enters. Poirot gestured to Diana's chair. "You, mademoiselle, or another." The dagger is seized, one thrust. Lang falls against the table, dislodging the horn. The killer wipes the blade on the curtain, see the smear, then flees through the window. But the dogs, Dr. Shaw spoke, were drugged. I found traces of chloral in their water this morning. Harrington roared. "Who had access?" "Anyone," Shaw said calmly. "The kennel key hangs in the gunroom." Poirot moved to the stag's head, and this noble beast saw all. He reached into the gaping mouth and extracted a second scrap, this one a torn corner of a telegram. "Delivery delayed. Police alerted. Burn this. L. Lang again." He faced the room. Someone here betrayed Mr. Lang to the authorities. Someone else silenced him, too. Motives, perhaps two killers. Or one very clever one. Lady Beatrice rose. "This is obscene. I'm returning to my room." As she passed the rhino, her sleeve caught the tusk. A panel in the base clicked open. Inside lay the missing Maasai shield, wrapped in oilskin, a price tag dangling, $15,000. Harrington stared as though at a ghost. "That's my shield." "No," Poirot said softly, "it is evidence. Someone hid it here after the murder, intending retrieval when the hue and cry died down." He closed the panel. "The stag has spoken, but it has more to say." Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing the deer park in skeletal clarity. Somewhere in the woods, a branch cracked. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The hunt is not yet over. Chapter 4. Alibis in the fog. The library smelled of wet wool and old secrets. Poirot had ordered the fire banked low, so that shadows pooled in the corners like spilled ink. A single green-shaded lamp threw a circle of light over the baize table, where 8 cards lay face down, each bearing a name. Around it, the suspects sat in a silence so brittle it might have been cut with the Maasai dagger, now locked in Dr. Shaw's black bag. Poirot stood beneath a portrait of the 7th Baronet in Highland dress, hands clasped behind his back. Rain hissed against the tall windows. Somewhere, a gutter dripped with the regularity of a metronome. "We proceed with order," he announced. "Alibis are the scaffolding of truth. We shall test each plank." He flipped the first card. Lord Reginald Harrington, from 11:45 until 1:15. I was in the billiard room with Captain Harrington and Mr. Lang. After Lang left, Miles and I played one more frame. I retired at 1:30. Jenkins brought me whiskey at 1:45. Ask him. Jenkins inclined his head. His lordship rang at 1:47 precisely. I carried the decanter on the silver tray. Poirot noted the exactitude. And the trophy room key? Returned to Mrs. Finch at 10:07. I locked the door myself. Captain Miles Harrington. Confirmed father's story until 12:45. Lang wanted another look at the shield. Said he had a buyer in Zurich. I told him to go to blazes. I went to my room, read the field until 2, then slept. Rosie saw my light under the door at 2:10. The maid Rosie, summoned from the doorway, bobbed. "Yes, sir." Light was on, and I heard pages turning. Miss Diana Vale. Laudanum at 11:30. Dr. Shaw prescribed it for nerves. I woke at 12:50 thirsty, went to the bathroom, heard voices in the corridor, men's voices, angry, returned to bed, woke again at 3:15, room spinning, that is all. Dr. Shaw corroborated the dosage. 10 drops in water, enough to fell a horse. Lady Beatrice Harrington, Retired at 10:15 after bridge. Took a sleeping powder. Heard nothing until Mrs. Finch's scream this morning. Her maid, a frightened girl named Clara, confirmed the powder and the closed door. Dr. Evelyn Shaw called to Mrs. Gifford's cottage at 11 for difficult labour, delivered a boy at 1:12, walked home through the fog, arrived 2:05. Jenkins let me in, went straight to my room. The village midwife, reached by runner, sent word. Baby born 1:12, Dr. Shaw present, Mr. Felix Lang, deceased, Mrs. Agnes Finch, locked up at 10:07, checked all ground floor windows, in bed by 10:30. My room is above the kitchen, heard the grandfather clock strike every hour until Mrs. Finch's scream. Jenkins the butler. After serving his lordship, I made my rounds at 2 a.m. The trophy room door was closed, no light beneath. I retired at 2:15. Poirot tapped the table. All accounted for, on paper. Yet a man is stabbed, a shield vanishes and reappears, dogs are drugged, a window opened from within. Let us examine the cracks. He produced a large sheet of paper and drew the manor's ground floor in neat lines. Trophy room at the centre, corridors radiating like spokes. Observe, from 12:45, when Lang parts from the Harringtons, until 2 Washould, when Jenkins passes the door, we have a window of 75 minutes. The killer must encounter Lang in the trophy room, subdue him, bruises on wrists, stab him, dagger from wall, hide the shield in the rhino plinth, drug the dogs before or during, exit via the French window, return to bed without muddy shoes or bloodied cuffs. Impossible for most, unless two acted in concert. Miles Harrington shifted, or Lang let his killer in, trusted them, précisément. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Now, the fog. It arrived at 11:50, thick by midnight. Anyone outside after that left no tracks, yet the window was opened after the rain began, for the sill is wet inside. He produced the mother-of-pearl button. "Captain, your smoking jacket, where is it?" Miles hesitated. "In my room. I changed before bed." Poirot dispatched Jenkins. The butler returned with a navy velvet jacket, left cuff torn, one button missing, faint rust-brown flecks on the lapel. "Blood," Dr. Shaw confirmed after a sniff of ammonium sulfide. "Human, type O, Lang's type." Miles went ashen. "I cut my hand on a cartridge yesterday." Poirot held up the button. "Found beside the body. Explain." I must have lost it earlier. Lang borrowed the jacket, said he was cold." Diana Vale laughed, a brittle sound. "Felix in velvet. He'd sooner wear sackcloth." Lady Beatrice's voice was venom. "My nephew is covering for his trollop. She killed Lang to keep her claws in the inheritance." Diana sprang up. "You bitter old—" "Silence!" Poirot's command cracked like a whip. "We deal in facts. Fact. The dogs were drugged with chloral hydrate, available in Dr. Shaw's bag and the stables for colic. Fact. The rhino plinth required strength to open. See the scrape marks. Fact. Someone moved the unicorn horn after death to stage a struggle." He turned to Dr. Shaw. "You arrived home at 2:05. The corridor to your room passes the trophy room. Did you notice anything?" Shaw frowned. "The door was ajar, 6 inches. I assumed his lordship forgot to lock it. A draught carried the smell of iron. Yet Jenkins saw it closed at 2:00. Therefore, the killer returned after Jenkins's round, before Dr. Shaw." A collective intake of breath. Poirot continued. "The button was planted, deliberately torn and dropped. The blood on the jacket smeared later. Someone wishes us to suspect Captain Harrington." He flipped the final card. "Blank. The 8th suspect," he said softly, "is among us, wearing another's guilt like a borrowed coat." Lord Harrington slammed the table. "This is madness. We're trapped here with a killer. Non." Poirot's smile was wintry. "The killer is trapped with me." He moved to the window. The fog was thinning. Skeletal trees emerged like drowning men. On the lawn, something glinted. Metal. Poirot opened the casement. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet earth. A silver cigarette case lay half buried in the gravel, engraved FL from DV, Paris, 1934. Diana Vale's hand flew to her throat. Poirot picked it up with a handkerchief. Inside, 3 cigarettes and a folded note in Lang's hand. "Midnight, trophy room, bring the horn, trust no one." He faced the room. "Mademoiselle Vale, you were to meet Mr. Lang, yet you claim laudanum stupor. Explain." Diana's voice trembled. He sent a message yesterday. Said if I didn't come, he'd tell Miles about Monte Carlo." "Blackmail." She nodded, tears spilling. "I went to the door at midnight, but it was locked. I knocked, no answer. I was afraid, so I left the case on the sill as a signal and ran." Poirot weighed the case. "The sill was dry then. Fog only wetted it later. Your story holds, but someone intercepted the rendezvous." Thunder growled. The lights flickered, died, plunging the room into gloom lit only by fire. In the darkness, glass shattered. The French window in the trophy room, 2 rooms away. Poirot's voice cut through panic. "Jenkins, lamps, the rest, stay seated." Light returned. The library door stood open. Footprints, wet, muddy, led from the trophy room across the hall toward the main staircase. They stopped at the newel post. Poirot knelt. The prints were small, size 5 again, but the tread was different. Ribbed rubber, a walking shoe, not Diana's courts. Dr. Shaw's eyes widened. "Those are my galoshes, from the boot room." Poirot straightened. "Someone borrows identities as easily as footwear. The game, mes amis, grows interesting." He turned to the staircase. Above, a door slammed. Then silence. The fog outside had lifted entirely, revealing the deer park in stark November clarity. And on the horizon, a figure in a dark coat ran toward the woods, carrying something that glinted like a shield. Poirot's eyes narrowed to slits. "En avant! The quarry breaks. Cover!" Chapter 5. The Hidden Poacher's Trail. The chase began in silence, the way a good hunt should. Poirot did not run. He moved with the deliberate speed of a man who trusts his mind more than his legs. He snatched a storm lantern from the hall table, shrugged into his ulster, and stepped onto the terrace. The fog had peeled back like a theatre curtain, revealing the deer park in monochrome. Silver grass, black trees, and the fleeing figure already halfway to the tree line, the Maasai shield flashing once in the weak sun before vanishing into the woods. Lord Harrington bellowed for guns. Miles sprinted for the gunroom. Dr. Shaw hesitated only long enough to grab her medical satchel. Diana Vale stood frozen on the steps, scarlet sweater vivid against the grey morning. Poirot raised a hand. "No, no guns. We corner the beast. We do not start a war." He set off across the lawn, lantern swinging. The grass was sodden. His patent shoes left perfect prints. Behind him, Miles and Shaw followed. Harrington lumbered in the rear, cursing the damp. The trail was child's play to Poirot's eye. The runner had abandoned stealth for speed. Broken hawthorn twigs, a heel mark gouging the soft earth, a scrap of navy wool snagged on bramble. The shield, awkward to carry, had left a furrow where its edge dragged. They reached the woods. Here the light fractured into green shards. The path narrowed to a deer track, muddy and treacherous. Poirot knelt, lantern low. "See, 2 sets now. Our quarry met another. Smaller boot, Jenkins's garden clogs, I think. They parted here." A single brass cartridge case gleamed in the leaf mould. Poirot pocketed it. Miles sniffed the air like a gun dog. "Gun oil! Someone's been shooting!" Poirot's moustache bristled. "Poaching, oui, but not deer." They pressed on. The track opened into a clearing dominated by an ancient oak, its trunk split by lightning. Beneath it lay the remains of a fire, charred bones, a rabbit skin pegged to dry. Nearby, a lean-to of branches and sacking. Inside, a battered knapsack, a poacher's wire snare, and a folded copy of the Times dated 3 days prior. The headline screamed, "Art smuggler sought in London raid." Poirot unfolded the knapsack. Inside, a small calfskin ledger. Pages of cramped entries, dates, weights, prices. One line leapt out. "Unicorn horn, narwhal, 42 minute, $8,000. Deliver Harrington Chase 1511, FL below. In red ink, police tipped. Abort." Miles whistled. Lang was running scared. Dr. Shaw examined the fire. "Cold 12 hours. Whoever camped here left before the murder." Poirot's gaze swept the clearing. A boot print led deeper into the woods. Toward the old ice house, a domed brick structure half swallowed by ivy. The door hung ajar on rust-eaten hinges. They approached. The air inside was tomb-cold, smelling of frost and decay. Blocks of ice from last winter still sweated in the dark. On the sawdust floor, the Maasai shield, propped against a crate. Its hide surface had been slit open. The lining bulged with oilskin packets. Poirot slit one with his penknife. Inside, a sheaf of $50 notes, crisp as frost. Another packet, a diamond necklace, the stones winking like malevolent eyes. "Lang's payment," Shaw murmured, "or his blackmail fund." Footprints circled the shield. 2 sets again. One turned back toward the house. The other continued through a side door that opened onto the ha-ha, separating park from kitchen garden. Poirot followed the second trail. It led to a potting shed, its windows opaque with grime. The door was locked. Miles put his shoulder to it. Wood splintered. Inside, gardening tools, seed trays, and on a workbench, a bundle of blood-stained rags. Beside it, a woman's walking shoe, size 5, caked in mud. Dr. Shaw's galoshes lay discarded in the corner. Shaw's face hardened. "Someone's playing merry hell with my wardrobe." Poirot lifted the rags, part of a maid's apron, the monogram R for Rosie. A single crimson fingerprint stained the hem. Miles swore. "Rosie! She's barely 17. "No," Poirot said. "Someone borrows identities like hats. Come." They returned to the ice house. Poirot examined the shield's lining more closely. Beneath the packets, a false bottom. He pried it up. Inside, a small tin box. Within the box, a brass key and a photograph. Lord Harrington younger, arm around a Maasai warrior, both holding the shield. On the back, in faded ink, for R.H., blood debt repaid. Monsieur Harrington arrived, panting. "Find anything?" Poirot held up the photograph. "Your past returns, mon ami. This warrior, he gave you the shield?" Harrington's face shuttered. "Long story. Kenya, 05, saved my life, gave me the shield as token, never saw him again." Yet someone believes the debt unpaid. A shout from the woods. Constable Greaves stumbled into the clearing, helmet askew. "Sir, tracks lead to the old railway cutting. Found this." He held out a torn scrap of navy wool, identical to the bramble snag. "And blood, fresh." Poirot took the wool. It smelled faintly of lavender water, Lady Beatrice's scent. They followed Greaves. The cutting was a scar through the hillside, rails long ripped up, sleepers rotting. At the bottom, a splash of red on grey stone. Poirot knelt. Not blood, paint. Someone had daubed a crude arrow pointing east toward the river. "A false trail," he murmured. "Our killer grows cunning." Miles scanned the embankment. There, Footprints climbing. They scrambled up. At the top, an abandoned gamekeeper's bothy, roof half collapsed. Inside, the air was thick with dust and gunpowder. On the table, a dismantled Webley revolver, cleaning rag beside it, and a single spent cartridge, matching the one from the clearing. Poirot reassembled the revolver with practiced clicks. "Recently fired! The poacher's weapon!" Dr. Shaw found a tin of chloral hydrate crystals beneath the floorboard, half empty. "The dogs," she said grimly. Poirot's lantern swept the walls. Pinned to the plaster, a map of the estate, red circles around the ice house, the bothy, the trophy room. A dotted line connected them, the poacher's trail. He traced it with a gloved finger. "Someone has been watching the house for weeks, planning, waiting for Lang." A low whistle outside. Greaves again. "Sir! Riverbank!" They ran. The river ran high and brown, swollen by rain. On the bank, half submerged, floated the missing Maasai dagger. Its blade washed clean, handle wrapped in oilskin. Tied to it, a note in waterproof ink. "The horn is next. Midnight. Come alone, or the girl dies." Monsieur Miles snatched it. "Rosie! She's missing!" Poirot's face was grim. The hunt turned savage. They raced back to the house. The kitchen was chaos, Mrs. Finch wringing her apron, Clara the maid sobbing. Rosie had vanished after serving breakfast. Her room, window open, bed untouched, a single court shoe left on the rug, Diana's by the size. Poirot gathered the household in the great hall. The stag's head glared down, glass eyes reflecting the panic. "Listen carefully," he said. "We are dealing with a poacher of men, not deer. He has Rosie. He wants the unicorn horn. At midnight, he will come." Harrington loaded a shotgun. "Let him." "No." Poirot's voice cracked like ice. "We set the trap, not spring it. Dr. Shaw, your bag. Chloral, yes? Miles, the dogs. Release them at dusk. They will track Rosie's scent. Lady Beatrice, his eyes fixed on her lavender-scented wrists. You will remain in sight. No more solitary walks." Beatrice's chin lifted. "I am not your prisoner." "You are my witness," Poirot corrected gently. "Someone borrows your perfume, your shoes, your rage. We will use that." He turned to the shield, still in the hall where Greaves had laid it. "And this, we return to the trophy room. Bait." Dusk fell early, a bruised purple. The dogs were released. They milled, confused, then bolted toward the woods, baying. Poirot watched from the terrace, lantern dimmed. Inside his mind, the pieces shifted. The poacher, M, Maasai warrior, descendant, Lang's ledger, blackmail or payment. The false trails, misdirection or desperation. Rosie, hostage or accomplice. The grandfather clock struck 6. Somewhere in the dark, a girl's life hung on the balance of a unicorn's horn. Poirot turned up his collar. "The trail is hot," he whispered to the night. "Now we follow the blood." Chapter 6. Trophies of Deception. The trophy room had become a stage, and Poirot its meticulous director. At 7 o'clock precisely, he ordered every lamp extinguished save one green-shaded banker's light over the mahogany table. The unicorn horn lay in the centre like a pale sceptre, its silver mount catching the glow and throwing it back in fractured shards. The Maasai shield, restuffed, resawn, hung once more in its gap between the ibex and the boar, the slit in its lining invisible to any but the closest eye. The bloodstain on the rug had been rolled away. A fresh drugget of plain crimson now drank the shadows. Poirot stood beneath the 12-point stag, hands clasped behind his back, and addressed the empty room. "Entrez, mes fantômes, the play begins." He had dismissed the household to the library under Miles Harrington's armed watch. Dr. Shaw alone remained, stationed in the adjoining gunroom with her medical bag, and a syringe of concentrated chloral. Jenkins the butler patrolled the corridor with a police whistle. The dogs, 6 pointers, were kennelled again, this time undrugged and ravenous for scent. At 7:12 the French window rattled. Poirot did not turn. A gloved hand eased the latch. The curtain stirred. A figure slipped inside, small, hooded, moving with the fluid silence of a cat. The hood fell back. Rosie the maid, face streaked with mud, eyes wide with terror. "Monsieur," she whispered, "he made me." Poirot's finger to his lips. "Doucement, where is he?" "Old Icehouse. Tied me. Said he'd come for the horn at midnight. Gave me this." She held out a scrap of oilskin. Inside, a single narwhal tusk shaving and a brass button, identical to the one found beside Lang's body. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A rehearsal. He tests the trap." He guided Rosie to the gun-room. "Dr. Shaw will keep you safe. Speak to no one else." Shaw locked the door behind them. Poirot returned to the trophy room and waited. At 8:03, the main door creaked. Lady Beatrice entered, candle in a silver holder, black dress rustling like raven wings. She moved straight to the shield, fingers probing the lining. "Looking for something, madame?" Poirot stepped from behind the rhino. Beatrice started. Wax spattered the drugget. I heard a noise. Oui, the noise of guilt." He took the candle, set it on the table. "Your perfume lingers on the wool we found in the woods. Your shoe size matches the prints. Yet you were in your room all night. Explain." Beatrice's chin lifted. "I lent my galoshes to Rosie days ago. As for perfume, half the maids use lavender water." Poirot produced the brass button. "And this? From your travelling coat. Lost, you said, in the fog." Her eyes flickered. A crash from the corridor." Miles Harrington burst in, shotgun levelled. "Father's gone. Slipped out the side door while I turned for coffee." Poirot's calm did not waver. "Bon, the quarry separates from the herd." He led them to the gun-room. Dr. Shaw had Rosie sedated with warm milk. The girl slept on a camp bed. On the wall, Shaw had pinned a crude map sketched from Rosie's description. Icehouse, bothy, riverbank, now with a new ex at the disused chapel in the North Wood. "Rosie says the man spoke Swahili," Shaw reported. "Called himself Mwana, son. Said the shield was stolen from his grandfather's grave." Poirot's mind raced. Not the warrior, but the bloodline. Revenge deferred a generation. They armed themselves, Miles with the shotgun, Shaw with a scalpel, Poirot with his walking stick. Ebony waited, a gift from the Brussels Sûreté. Jenkins carried the lantern. They left the house at 8:45, moving single file along the poacher's trail, now lit by a rising moon. The chapel crouched beneath yews, its steeple cracked like a broken tooth. The door hung open, candlelight flickered within. They entered. Lord Harrington stood before the altar, unicorn horn in one hand, revolver in the other. At his feet lay a young African man, early 20s, Maasai shuka torn, wrists bound with binder twine. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. "Father!" Miles lowered the shotgun. Harrington's voice was raw. "He had Rosie's scarf, threatened to cut her throat if I didn't bring the horn." The prisoner lifted his head. "The horn is Mzimu, sacred. Your grandfather robbed my ancestor's grave. Lang promised return for gold. He lied." Poirot stepped forward. "And you killed Lang to reclaim it." The young man spat. "Lang died by his own greed. I watched from the window. He argued with the woman in green. She stabbed him. I took the shield to hide the money. Then the dogs woke." Diana Vale's emerald sweater. Poirot filed it away. Harrington's revolver wavered. "I paid Lang to broker the return, quietly. Didn't know he'd double-crossed the boy." Poirot knelt beside the prisoner, Cut the twine with Shaw's scalpel. Your name? Olemwewe. The young man rubbed his wrists. My father sent me. The shield carries our family's Ngaji, spirit. Without it, we are cursed. Miles helped him up. We'll return it, properly. A twig snapped outside. Poirot whirled. The chapel door slammed. A key scraped in the lock. Mon Dieu, trapped! Smoke seeped under the door, acrid, chemical. Shaw sniffed. Burning rags soaked in paraffin. Harrington fired at the lock. The bullet ricocheted. Poirot scanned the chapel. Stained glass windows too high, stone walls thick. A trapdoor in the crypt, nailed shut. Miles hurled himself at the door. Wood splintered but held. Smoke thickened. Olemwewe tore a strip from his shukka, soaked it in the font's holy water, pressed it to his face. Poirot's gaze fell on the altar cloth. Heavy brocade, embroidered with the Harrington crest. He yanked it free, revealing an iron ring. The altar was a false front. Beneath, a narrow staircase spiraled down. Family bolt hole, Harrington coughed. Civil War vintage. They descended into darkness. The passage was damp, spider-webbed, smelling of earth and rat droppings. It sloped gently for 50 yards, then opened into the icehouse cellar, the same sawdust floor where the shield had been hidden. The fire above had not reached here. A ladder led up to the domed roof. Poirot climbed first, pushed the hatch. Moonlight flooded in. They emerged into the clearing, lungs burning, footprints, small ribbed sole, led away toward the river. Shaw's galoshes again. Poirot knelt. Beside the prince, a single emerald button, thread torn. Diana, Miles whispered. They followed the trail to the riverbank. The water ran fast and black. On the mud, drag marks, a woman's heel gouging deep. Then nothing. Shaw's voice was clinical. Currents strong. Body could surface miles downstream. Poirot stared at the dark water. Or she walked still. The button planted like the others. He turned back to the group. Lord Harrington supported Olemwewe. Miles clutched the unicorn horn like a talisman. The trophies deceive, Poirot said softly. The shield, the horn, the girl, all bait. Someone orchestrates from within the house, borrowing faces, scents, shoes. We have been hunting shadows. He looked at the chapel, now fully ablaze, flames licking the yews. But fire cleanses. Tomorrow we search the ashes and the hearts of those who lit them. Back at the manor, the clock struck 10. The household gathered in the great hall, faces soot-streaked, eyes haunted. Rosie, revived, clung to Mrs. Finch. Jenkins poured brandy with trembling hands. Poirot stood beneath the stag's head, unicorn horn restored to its cradle on the table. "Listen carefully," he said. "The killer believes the horn destroyed, the shield lost, the trail cold. At midnight, they will come to confirm. We will be waiting." He assigned positions. Miles and Olemwewe in the gunroom, Harrington and Jenkins at the main door, Shaw in the corridor with her syringe. Poirot himself took the trophy room, seated in the rhino's shadow, a length of picture cord across his lap. The house settled into watchful dark. Outside, the chapel fire burned lower, sparks drifting like malevolent stars. At 11:57, the French window eased open. A figure in black slipped inside, hooded, gloved, silent. Moonlight glinted on steel, the missing Zulu assegai from the display. The figure moved to the table, lifted the horn, and froze. The silver mount was loose. Inside, not ivory, but plaster of Paris, painted. "Cherchez le trompe-l'œil," Poirot murmured, rising, the deception of trophies. The figure spun. The hood fell back. Mrs. Agnes Finch, housekeeper, eyes wild with fury. "You!" Harrington roared from the doorway. Finch lunged with the assegai. Poirot sidestepped. The cord whipped around her ankles. She crashed to the rug, weapon skittering. Miles pinned her arms. Shaw knelt, syringe ready. Finch spat. "The shield was promised to my son, born of the Maasai girl your grandfather raped. Lang cheated us both. I killed him for the money, hid the shield, framed the girl." Her confession tumbled out. Drugging the dogs, planting buttons, setting the chapel fire to destroy evidence. Diana Vale had confronted Lang minutes before. Argument overheard. Emerald button torn in the struggle. Finch struck from behind. "Diana!" Miles whispered. "Fled in panic," Finch sneered. "Probably drowned herself in guilt." Poirot bound her wrists with the curtain tie. "The poacher's trail was yours, madame, but the blood debt ends tonight." As dawn paled the windows, Constable Greaves arrived with reinforcements. Finch was led away, still cursing in Swahili, learned from a lover long dead. The unicorn horn, real this time, was returned to Olamwu. The shielded spirit cleansed by fire and truth would travel to Kenya with him. Poirot stood alone in the trophy room. The stag's glass eyes seemed less accusatory now. "Finis," he murmured, "but the greatest trophy is always justice." Yet as he turned to leave, his foot struck something beneath the rug. A small brass key, identical to the one in the shield's false bottom. Poirot's smile was wintry. Encore an act, perhaps. Chapter 7. The Butler's Broken Arrow. The key was warm from Poirot's pocket, though the morning air bit like a terrier. He stood on the terrace at 6:30, watching the last embers of the chapel glow dull red against the pale sky. Mrs. Finch had been taken away in handcuffs an hour earlier, her screams echoing across the deer park until the police van swallowed them. The household slept the sleep of the exhausted, or the guilty. Poirot turned the brass key between gloved fingers. It was smaller than a Yale, heavier than a wardrobe key, its bow stamped with a tiny arrowhead. He had seen its twin only once, in the false bottom of the Maasai shield, That one had opened nothing. This one promised something. Jenkins the butler emerged from the side door, silver tray balanced with coffee and a single croissant. His face was grey, the lines around his mouth etched deeper than yesterday. "Monsieur Poirot, his lordship asks if you require anything before he telephones the solicitors." Poirot accepted the cup. "Merci. Tell Lord Harrington I require the East Wing attic. And your presence, Jenkins. 10 minutes." The butler's eyes flickered. Fear or fatigue, Poirot could not yet tell. "As you wish." The East Wing attic was a cavern of dust and memory. Slatted light fell through a single dormer. Motes danced like slow-motion snow. Trunks, hat boxes, a child's rocking horse with one eye missing. In the centre stood a campaign desk, teak, scarred, brass corners green with verdigris. A lock the exact size of the key. Poirot inserted it. The lid lifted with a sigh. Inside, yellowed letters tied in red ribbon, a photograph of a younger Jenkins in dress uniform, Boer War, 1901, and a small cedar box. He opened it. A broken arrow lay on faded velvet. The shaft was ash wood, fletched with raven feathers, the iron head snapped clean. Beside it, a scrap of parchment, for the debt unpaid. J. Jenkins arrived, breathing hard from the stairs. "Sir." Poirot held up the arrow. "Your trophy, I think." The butler's composure cracked like thin ice. I stored it for his lordship's father. A hunting accident. The old baron shot a native guide, claimed it was a mistake. The arrow was the guide's. He kept it as reminder, or penance," Poirot said softly. "And you, Jenkins, what is your debt?" Jenkins sank onto a trunk. "I was the guide's Batman, carried the arrow back to England. Promised his son I'd see justice. Years passed. I became butler here. Then Lang arrived. Said he could sell the shield, split the money. I refused. He laughed. Said the family would pay more to keep the secret buried. Poirot lifted the photograph. On the back, in Jenkins's neat copperplate, "To my son, if I fail, find M." "Your son," Poirot said. "Olamwewe?" Jenkins nodded, tears cutting channels through the dust on his cheeks. "Born in Kenya. I sent money, letters. When Lang threatened to expose the old scandal, I panicked. Mrs. Finch, she knew my story, offered to help. We staged the poacher's trail together. I never meant murder." Poirot's voice was gentle steel. "Yet you drugged the dogs. You planted the buttons. You let an innocent girl be terrorized. I thought to frighten Lang into leaving. Finch acted alone in the stabbing. I swear it." A floorboard creaked behind them. Dr. Shaw stood in the doorway, medical bag in hand. "I heard voices. Rosie's fever spiked. She's asking for Jenkins." The butler rose, trembling. Poirot blocked his path. One more thing. He produced the brass key from the shield. "This opened nothing. Why?" Jenkins hesitated. "Finch had it made, a duplicate. She planned to frame me if things went wrong. Hid the real key in the chapel font. The fire destroyed it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, fire cleanses, but brass endures." He led them downstairs to the great hall. The stag's head had been taken down for cleaning. In its place hung a blank rectangle of darker wallpaper. Poirot climbed the library steps, reached behind the cornice, and extracted a small oilskin packet. Inside, the original key, blackened but intact, and a folded note in Finch's spidery hand. "If I burn, the butler hangs. The arrow breaks the bow." Jenkins stared as though at his own death warrant. Poirot turned to Shaw. "Doctor, your galoshes, where are they now?" "In the boot room, muddy as sin. Bring them, and Captain Harrington's smoking jacket." Minutes later, the hall became a courtroom. Miles arrived, hair tousled, eyes bloodshot. Lord Harrington followed, face thunderous. Olamwewe stood apart, the real unicorn horn cradled in his shuka like a child. Poirot laid the evidence on the billiard table. The broken arrow, the 2 keys, the jacket with its bloodied cuff, Shaw's galoshes caked in chapel soot. "Let us reconstruct the final act," he began. "Mrs. Finch killed Lang, oui, but she did not act alone. Yes, Poacher's trail required 2. 1 to lay false clues, 1 to watch the house. Jenkins, you provided the arrow, your trophy of shame. Finch used it to point suspicion at you." He held up the duplicate key. "This was to be found on your person, Jenkins, after the fire. The note would seal your fate." Jenkins sank to his knees. "I deserve it." Olamwewe stepped forward. "My father's blood is on many hands. Let the living go free." Lord Harrington's voice was gravel. "The boy's right. We've all carried this curse long enough." Poirot considered. "Justice is not vengeance. Jenkins, you will accompany Olamwewe to Kenya. Return the shield, the horn, the arrow. Make restitution with your life, not your death." Jenkins bowed his head. "Gladly." Dr. Shaw cleared her throat. "There's more. Rosie's fever. She's been hiding something." She produced a small enamel brooch, emerald green shaped like a stag beetle. "Found it under her pillow. Diana Vale's." Miles went white. "Diana's jewellery. She never removed this." Poirot's mind raced back to the riverbank, the drag marks, the single emerald button. He turned to the French windows. Beyond, the deer park lay silver with frost. A figure moved at the tree line, small, limping, wrapped in a groundsman's coat. "Diana!" Miles breathed. They ran. The figure stumbled, fell to her knees in the grass. Her face was bruised, lips cracked, but alive. In her hand, a sodden diary, pages swollen with river water. "Finch!" she gasped as Miles reached her. "She pushed me in, thought I'd drown. I clung to roots, crawled through the culvert." Poirot knelt, wrapping his ulster around her shoulders. "You saw the murder?" Diana nodded. "Lang and I argued. He wanted me to steal the horn. I refused. Finch came from behind the tiger, stabbed him. I ran. She chased me to the river." Lord Harrington's face was stone. "The woman's madness ends here." Back in the hall, Diana was given brandy and blankets. Poirot gathered the final pieces. Mrs. Finch believed the shield her birthright through a Maasai grandmother. Lang promised her a fortune. When he reneged, she killed him. Jenkins provided the poacher's legend to cover her tracks. The broken arrow was to be his noose. He turned to Olemwewe. "The debt is paid in truth, not blood." The young man placed the unicorn horn on the billiard table. "My father will know peace." As the sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the trophies, Poirot felt the house exhale. The stag's blank space on the wall seemed less a wound now, more a promise. Jenkins packed a single valise. At the door, he paused. "Monsieur Poirot, will they hang her?" "Transportation, perhaps. Madness pleads." Poirot's smile was sad, but some trophies can never be unmounted. The Bentley stood ready. Olemwewe and Jenkins climbed in, father and son bound for a different hunt. Diana leaned on Miles's arm, the emerald brooch pinned once more to her sweater. Poirot watched them go, then turned back to the empty trophy room. The green-shaded lamp still burned. On the table lay the broken arrow, its raven feathers stirring in a draught from nowhere. He snapped it across his knee. "Assez," he murmured. "The bow is unstrung." Yet, as he left, his foot brushed something beneath the drugget. A third brass key, smaller still, its bow stamped with a tiny unicorn. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Encore un secret," he whispered to the silent heads. "The chase, it never ends." Chapter 8. Echoes of the Wild Chase. The storm arrived at dusk like a cavalry charge, wind howling across the deer park and rattling the manor's bones. Poirot had ordered the trophy room sealed again, but the third brass key, unicorn bow, no bigger than a sixpence, burned in his waistcoat pocket. He stood at the French window, watching rain lash the glass in silver needles. Lightning strobed, illuminating the lawn in stark white. The stone stags locked in combat, the empty space where the 12-pointer had hung, and, briefly, a human silhouette sprinting toward the woods. Poirot's breath fogged the pain. "Le voilà! The final quarry!" He turned. The room had been stripped to essentials. The mahogany table, the unicorn horn, now confirmed plaster by Dr. Shaw's acid test, the Maasai shield restored to its hook. The bloodied rug was gone. Bare boards gleamed. On the table lay the broken arrow, its raven feathers twitching in the draught. Lord Harrington entered, oilskins dripping. "Power's out! Generator struck by lightning. Dogs are loose. Miles let them run to track Diana's scent from the river. She's in no state to walk, but she swears she saw someone in the woods at twilight." Poirot nodded. "Someone who believes the game still plays." He produced the tiny key. This was beneath the drugget. A unicorn for a unicorn. Where does it fit? Harrington frowned. "Grandfather's curio cabinet. Upstairs, the blue bedroom. Hasn't been opened since I was a boy." They climbed the main staircase, lantern swinging. The blue bedroom smelled of cedar and neglect. A walnut cabinet stood against the far wall, its doors carved with unicorns rampant. The lock was minute, perfect for the key. Poirot inserted it. The doors sighed open, Inside, velvet-lined compartments, each holding a single object. A child's silver rattle, dented, a lock of auburn hair tied with faded ribbon, a miniature portrait of a woman in Edwardian dress, eyes sharp as Beatrice's. And in the central drawer, a leather-bound journal, brass clasp snapped. Poirot lifted the journal. The first page bore a date, 15th of March, 1887. The handwriting was spidery, urgent. The horn is false, narwhal, not unicorn, but the curse is real. R.H. shot the guide to claim it. The Marseille boy swore vengeance on the bloodline. I hide this lest the truth destroy us. Below, a pressed, flower, acacia, yellowed, and a charcoal sketch of the unicorn horn, annotated, hidden in the stag's head. Key with the arrow. Harrington's face drained. Father never spoke of this. Poirot closed the journal. Because the curse walked on two legs. Someone in this house has read it. Thunder crashed. The lights, restored momentarily, died again. In the darkness, a scream shredded the air. High, female, from the floor below. They ran. The scream came from the trophy room. The door stood open. Wind howled through. On the table, the plaster horn lay shattered. In its hollow core, a roll of parchment and a single raven feather. Poirot unrolled the parchment. Ink, still wet. The stag sees all. Midnight, bring the real horn, or the girl burns with the house. Diana Vale stumbled in, supported by Miles. Her face was parchment pale. Rosie, she's gone again. I saw her from my window, dragged toward the stables by a man in a groundsman's coat. Miles's shotgun was already in his hands. The dogs will lead us, Poirot finished. He grabbed a storm lantern, the journal, the broken arrow. En avant! They plunged into the storm. Rain slashed sideways. Lightning turned the world to negative. The pointers bayed from the stable yard, pawing at the loft door. Miles kicked it open. The ladder trembled under their weight. In the loft, hay bales, tack, the smell of horse and fear. Rosie lay bound in a corner, mouth gagged with a scarf, Lady Beatrice's silk monogrammed. Her eyes were wide above the cloth. A man crouched over her, tall, hooded, face obscured by a wool muffler. In his hand, a hurricane lamp, wick trimmed high. Petrol cans lined the walls. "Step back," he snarled, voice muffled. "The horn, or I burn it all." Poirot raised the lantern. "Monsieur, you have hunted long, but the stag is down." The man hesitated. Lightning flashed. For an instant the muffler slipped. The face beneath was Jenkins's, yet not. Older, gaunt, eyes burning with decades of hate. Harrington gasped. "Impossible! Jenkins left with Olamwue at noon." Poirot's smile was thin. "No. Jenkins is in the village, drinking tea with Constable Greaves. You, sir, are the echo." He stepped forward. "You read the journal years ago, perhaps when you were Jenkins's under-butler. You learned the secret of the stag's head. You waited for Lang to bring the horn, then used Finch's madness to cover your theft." The man laughed, a sound like tearing canvas. "Clever Belgian. The horn is worth a fortune on the continent. Finch was a tool, Jenkins a fool. The girl?" He nudged Rosie. "Insurance." Miles levelled the shotgun. "Let her go." The man struck a match. Flame hissed to life. One move. Poirot tossed the broken arrow. It spun, glinting, and struck the man's wrist. The match fell, guttered in a puddle of petrol. Flame whooshed up a hay bale. Chaos. Miles fired into the rafters. Splinters rained. Diana dragged Rosie free. Harrington beat at the flames with his coat. The man lunged for the ladder. Poirot tripped him with the ebony stick. They rolled in the hay, the impostor's hands at Poirot's throat. Strength was not Poirot's weapon. He drove his knee into the man's groin, twisted free, and brought the stick down across the impostor's temple. The man slumped. Dr. Shaw appeared, syringe gleaming. Chloral, he'll sleep till London. They carried the unconscious man downstairs. In the stable yard, the dogs circled growling. Poirot peeled away the muffler. The face was Jenkins's, yet older, scarred, a twin separated by war and exile. A birthmark on the left cheek confirmed it. Harrington stared. My God! The under-butler, Elias Jenkins, dismissed in 14 for theft, thought he died in the trenches. Elias stirred, eyes focusing on Poirot. The horn, in the stag's head, always was. Poirot nodded to Miles. Fetch the head. The 12-pointer had been stored in the gun-room, wrapped in sacking. Miles unwrapped it. Inside the hollow neck, a second unicorn horn. Ivory, spiraled, tipped with gold. The real one. Harrington lifted it reverently. Grandfather's lie. He swapped them to hide the curse. Poirot turned to Elias. You returned as poacher, then imposter. You used Finch, framed Jenkins, terrorized Rosie, all for this. Elias spat blood. The family owed us. My brother died for their secrets. The storm broke overhead, rain hissing on the cobbles. Poirot looked at the horn, the journal, the broken arrow. Debts compound, he said quietly, but some are paid in truth. Constable Greaves arrived with the real Jenkins, shocked, trembling, at his side. The brothers faced each other across the years. No embrace, only a nod heavy with ghosts. Rosie, freed, clung to Diana. He said the stag would watch me burn. Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder. The stag is blind now, ma petite. The hunt ends. They returned to the house. The trophy room was lit by candles. The plaster horn's shards swept away. Poirot laid the real horn on the table beside the journal. Lord Harrington, he said, the curse is a story you will tell. Open the cabinet. Let the light in. Harrington nodded. The heads come down. The horn goes to Olmuoe. No more secrets. As the storm moved east, thunder fading to a growl, Poirot stood alone with the stag's empty mount. He fitted the tiny unicorn key into a crack in the plaster wall behind it. A panel clicked open. Inside, a final trophy, a child's wooden bow, string long rotted, carved with the initials R.H. and E.J., a note in a boy's scrawl, for when we hunt together again. Poirot closed the panel. Some echoes, he decided, were best left sleeping. Outside, the first pale hint of dawn touched the deer park. The stone stags stood sentinel, rain-washed and silent. The wild chase was over. Chapter 9. The Bloodied. Horn's secret. The manor woke to a silence so complete it felt like the aftermath of a gunshot. No birds, no wind, only the slow drip of water from the eaves, and the faint smell of smoke drifting from the chapel's ruins. Poirot stood in the trophy room at 7 o'clock, coat buttoned to the throat, the real unicorn horn cradled in a square of black velvet. Its spiral caught the weak November light and threw it back in cold fire. He had not slept. The wooden bow from the hidden panel lay on the table beside the journal, the broken arrow and the tiny unicorn key, now strung on a silk cord around his neck like a talisman. Every object told a fragment. Together they sang a single treacherous note. Lord Harrington entered, eyes red-rimmed, carrying a tray of coffee that trembled in his hands. The police surgeon's with Elias Jenkins. Concussion, broken wrist. He'll live to stand trial. He set the tray down. Olmuoe and the real Jenkins left at dawn. Train to Southampton, then the SS Kenya Castle. The shield and horn go with them. Poirot poured coffee with ceremonial care. Bon, but the horn you hold is still false. Harrington stared. Shaw tested it. Ivory gold tip. Narwhal, yes, but not the horn your grandfather stole. Poirot lifted the velvet. Beneath the spiral, a hairline seam circled the base. He twisted. The gold cap came away like a cork. Inside the hollow shaft, a roll of oilskin stiff with age. He unrolled it on the table. A map, hand-drawn, ink faded to sepia, showed the Harrington estate in miniature. Red X's marked the trophy room, the ice house, the chapel. A dotted line led from the stag's head to a final X beneath the floorboards of this very room, annotated in the same spidery hand as the journal. True horn, blooded, bury deep. Harrington's voice cracked. My God, he hid it under our feet. Poirot knelt, pressed the unicorn key into a knothole near the hearth. A square of parquet lifted like a trapdoor. Beneath, a tin box soldered shut, the lid stamped with the Harrington crest. He pried it open with the ebony stick. Inside lay the horn. It was shorter than the narwhal replica, barely 30 centimetres, but the ivory was yellowed, cracked, stained along one groove with a dark rust brown that no amount of time could fade. At the tip, a sliver of iron, part of the arrowhead that had killed the Maasai guide in 1887. The blood had soaked into the spiral and dried to a permanent accusation. Harrington recoiled. That's human? Oui, the guide's blood. Your grandfather sawed the horn from a live unicorn, mythical, none but sacred to the tribe. He buried the truth beneath his own hearth. Footsteps on the stairs. Dr. Shaw entered, medical bag in hand, followed by Miles and Diana, both pale but steady. Rosie trailed behind, clutching a mug of cocoa. Shaw's voice was clinical. Elias confessed everything in the night. He returned in 19, posing as a groundsman. Learned the house's secrets, waited for Lang to bring a buyer for the fake horn. When Finch killed Lang, Elias saw his chance. Swap the replicas, sell the real one, vanish. Miles added, he admits planting the buttons, the notes, the fire. Wanted us chasing ghosts while he dug up the floor. Poirot lifted the bloodied horn, but the stag saw all. He turned to the empty mount on the wall. The head was hollowed to hide the map. Elias never found the final X. Diana's eyes filled. And Rosie? Insurance, Poirot said gently. Elias needed a witness to burn if the net closed. Finch was the blade, Elias the shadow. He laid the horn on the velvet beside its clean twin. 2 horns, 1 lie, 1 truth. The lie travelled to Kenya this morning. The truth stays here until we decide its fate. Harrington's jaw worked. Burn it. End the curse. Nah. Poirot's tone brooked no argument. Fire destroys evidence, not memory. The Maasai deserve their relic returned, blood and all. Olemwewe will carry it home. The stain is their history, not ours to erase. Rosie set her mug down. There's more, sir. She produced a folded sheet, torn from the household ledger. Found it in Mrs. Finch's apron pocket before the police took her. A list of payments, to Elias, to Lang, to someone called B. Lady Beatrice's initial. The room chilled. Beatrice had not appeared since the storm. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Where is Lady Beatrice? Miles frowned. In her room. Said she had a migraine. They ran. The east wing corridor was dim, curtains still drawn. Beatrice's door stood ajar. Inside, the bed made, dressing gown folded, a single sheet of heavy cream notepaper on the pillow. My dear Reginald, the hunt is over for me. I funded Elias to keep the scandal buried, paid Lang to authenticate the fake. When Finch killed him, I saw the abyss. The blood is on my hands too. Tell Miles I loved him as a son. The emeralds are in the safe. Combination 1887, forgive me. Beatrice on the rug, a smear of crimson leading to the open window. 3 stories below, the terrace stones glistened with rain. A single black court shoe lay on its side, heel snapped. Dr. Shaw leaned out. No body. She climbed down the ivy. See the broken stems? Poirot scanned the deer park. A figure in black moved at the tree line, limping but determined, carrying a small portmanteau. Lady Beatrice fleeing with the last of the lie. Miles started for the door. Poirot caught his arm. Laissez! Some quarrels are with ghosts. Let her go! Harrington's voice was hollow. She was my sister. She was the keeper of the curse, Poirot said. Now she carries it alone. They returned to the trophy room. Poirot wrapped the bloodied horn in the oilskin map, sealed it with wax from the green lamp. Constable Greaves will wire Southampton. The Kenya Castle sails at noon. Olemwewe will receive this before the gangway rises. He placed the tin box in Harrington's hands. Your grandfather began the hunt. You end it. Harrington nodded, tears cutting channels through the soot on his cheeks. The walls come down, every head, every lie. Miles added quietly, and the emeralds, Diana and I will start a trust. For the village school, for Rosie's future. The girl smiled, the first real smile since the blood was discovered. Poirot lifted the wooden bow. 1 trophy remains. He laid it on the hearth, struck a match, and watched the flames take the childish carving. The initials RH and EJ curled black, then vanished. Outside, the sun broke through low clouds, gilding the wet lawn. The stone stags gleamed like sentinels released from duty. Poirot turned to leave. At the door, he paused. The bloodied horn returns home. The little grey cells rest. Yet, as he stepped into the corridor, his foot struck something small beneath the runner. A final brass key, no larger than a fingernail, its bow shaped like a tiny stag. Poirot pocketed it without a word. The hunt, he reflected, was never truly over. Chapter 10. Poirot's Final Quarry. The Bentley's engine had cooled to a metallic heartbeat by the time Poirot returned to the trophy room for the last time. It was 11 o'clock on a morning so bright it felt indecent after the storm. Sunlight poured through the French windows, turning dust motes into gold leaf, and the bare boards into a stage washed clean. Every head had been removed overnight, stag, tiger, rhino, wrapped in sacking and carted to the village hall for auction to the British Museum. The walls showed pale rectangles where lies had hung for decades. Only one object remained on the mahogany table, the bloodied unicorn horn, sealed in its oilskin roll, addressed in Poirot's neat copperplate to Olemwewe, passenger, SS Kenya Castle, Southampton. A police courier waited in the hall to carry it to the docks. Poirot stood beneath the empty mount of the 12-point stag, the tiny stagbow key cold against his palm. He had not slept. The little grey cells demanded a final accounting. Lord Harrington entered, coat over his arm, face shaved but eyes ancient. The house feels hollow, Poirot, like a rifle after the last shot. Emptiness is the price of truth. Poirot held up the stag key. But one cartridge remains. Where does this fit? Harrington frowned. Grandfather's gun cabinet, down in the cellar, hasn't been opened since the war. They descended the stone stairs. The cellar smelled of coal dust and gun oil. A rosewood cabinet stood against the far wall, its lock a pinprick beside the stag crest. The key slid home with a soft click. Inside, a single shelf. On it, a Webley revolver, cleaned, oiled, one round missing, and a leather pouch. Poirot opened the pouch. 6 cartridges, brass gleaming. and a photograph. 2 boys in knickerbockers, one fair, one dark, arms slung around each other's shoulders. On the back, in faded pencil, R.H. and E.J., partners in crime, 1895. Harrington's breath caught. My father and Elias Jenkins, before the rift. Poirot lifted the revolver. The round fired in the chapel loft. Elias kept the gun as trophy. Your father kept the photograph as penance. He closed the cabinet. The hunt ends where it began, with boys and secrets. Upstairs, the household gathered in the great hall for farewells. Miles and Diana stood hand in hand, the emerald brooch now pinned to a simple wool dress. Rosie carried a small valise, her belongings for a new life in the village school. Dr. Shaw checked her watch. The courier tapped his foot. Poirot addressed them like a conductor before the final note. Mes amis, the quarry is run to earth. Mrs. Finch, transported for life. Elias Jenkins, imprisonment, then deportation. Lady Beatrice, he paused. A telegram from Folkestone. She sails for Calais at noon. The emeralds fund the trust. The horn returns home. The walls are bare. Harrington extended his hand. We owe you everything, Poirot. Poirot's grip was firm. You owe the truth. Guard it better than trophies. The courier took the oilskin packet. The Bentley's door slammed. Gravel crunched as the car disappeared down the drive. Silence settled, thick as dust. Poirot lingered in the trophy room. He laid the stag key on the table beside the wooden bow's ashes. Then, with deliberate care, he opened the French window and stepped onto the terrace. The deer park stretched silver and green. At the tree line, a lone figure waited. Lady Beatrice, portmanteau at her feet, black coat buttoned to the throat. She had not fled after all. Poirot crossed the lawn. Grass sprang damp beneath his shoes. Madame, he said softly, the hunt is over. Beatrice's eyes were dry, bright. I came to watch the horn leave. Then I will go. Poirot studied her. You funded Elias to bury the scandal. When Finch killed Lang, you saw the abyss and chose to fall. She laughed, a sound like breaking ice. I chose to pay. The emeralds were my dowry, stolen from the same African mines. Blood money for Bloodhorn. She opened the portmanteau. Inside, a small cedar box. She lifted the lid. A final unicorn horn. Smaller, perfect, unstained. The first fake, she said. Grandfather made 3. This one he kept for luck. I kept it for guilt. Poirot took it. Ivory, cool, flawless. You would have let the bloodied horn sail, carrying the lie forever. Beatrice met his gaze. Some lies are mercy. Poirot weighed the horn in his palm. Then, with a sudden motion, he hurled it into the air. It arced, glittering, and shattered against the stone stag's antler. Fragments rained like hail. No, mercy is truth. Beatrice closed the empty box. Then I am free. She walked away, coat flapping like a crow's wing, and disappeared into the woods. Poirot did not follow. He returned, to the trophy room. The stag key lay where he had left it. He picked it up, turned it once, and dropped it into the cold hearth. With a match, he lit the kindling. The key glowed, warped, melted into a bead of brass. The door opened. Hastings stood there, suitcase in hand, returned from London. Poirot, old chap. Missed the whole show, I hear. Anything left for a fellow to do? Poirot smiled, the first real smile in days. Mon ami, the chase is finished, but the little grey cells, they never rest. He gestured to the bare walls. Come, we will take lunch in the village, Saulmunier perhaps, and then, his eyes twinkled, we will find a new hunt. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The stone stags stood blind and mute. The manor, emptied of its ghosts, waited for whatever came next. Poirot adjusted his Homburg, offered Hastings his arm, and stepped into the light. The final quarry was justice, and it had